Hello and welcome to Gary's Scaries. I am Gary.
And I'm Tabitha.
Wait, what? Hello and welcome to this special episode of Gary's Scaries Haunted Childhood Home. Yes, Series 3 has been canceled, although some of you may have caught that first episode that I uploaded not too long ago. I have since taken it down because I'm going to be incorporating a lot of it into this final episode on Halloween night. Halloween night is actually the 3rd anniversary for this channel, which began with the Haunted Childhood Home series. So it's not only fitting that we wrap this whole series up on that night, but it's also fitting because the house was just sold. So in this episode, we're going to take a look back at the Haunted Childhood Home series, and the stories will be laid out in chronological order for you instead of kind of jumping around with each episode. But if you think you've seen everything there is to see within those episodes, you would be wrong, because this episode actually has a lot of bonus footage in it. So whether you're new here or not, this is a great episode to watch. Then the episode to end all episodes will be premiering Halloween night, and it will incorporate everything that I have been shooting over there lately as I've been preparing to get the house ready to be sold. And let me tell you, I don't think everybody is happy about it. That's all I'm going to say for now, so let's roll back those clocks, not just 3 years, but let's go all the way back to 1976. But first, my spirit of choice tonight, while taking a look back at the spirits, is a black cherry vodka. Cheers. So in 1976, my dad completed the house he'd been working on. He built it from the ground up, he designed it. So the history of the house has always just been our family's. When we first moved into the house, my bedroom and the entire upstairs had yet to be completed. So I shared a room with my brother for a while, and this room kind of became the playroom. I wanted to make a video where I interviewed myself. So I had my cassette deck and I recorded all the questions I was going to ask, and then I left space in between, enough time for me to answer. One of the questions, I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was a yes or no answer. So when I played the tape back, I heard this deep no. I rushed that tape down to my mother, I played it for her, and she just kind of giggled and said, "Gary, how did you do that?" Finally, it dawned on her that I couldn't have done this because that voice was way too deep and my voice hadn't changed yet. Before I even knew what EVPs were, I had already captured one. I think it was my mother who saw the first apparition, shadow figure. I was really young and she had come running into my bedroom. She shook me awake. And when I woke up, she said, "Oh, Gary, thank God. I thought you might have passed away." And I was like, what? Apparently, she had gone outside to get some wood pellets for the stove. And as she walked in the front door, she saw through the living room to the sliding glass door that goes out onto the deck. She saw a shadow figure that was about my height. She said, "Oh, Gary, you scared me." That's when the shadow thing turned and went through the door. And she ran over there and grabbed the door to open it and say, "Gary, get back in here. It's too cold out there." When she realized the door was locked and that whatever this was had not opened the door to go out. And it being about my height and whatnot, she thought it was me telling her goodbye, and it freaked her out. When I was about 13, my mom and I were out yard sailing, which is something she liked to do practically every week. This one particular time, we came across a Ouija board. Ever since day one of using that Ouija board, there were 3 spirits who always came through to talk to us. Dubs, Vicky, and TG. When we asked him what that stood for, he said the grave, but he'd never been alive and he wasn't dead. Later on, I discovered that basically that is the definition of a demon. He would take over the board when you're in the middle of a conversation with another spirit. He would take over and start spelling out TG, 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 TG. And he would just keep it up until you gave up. One time, my cousin and I were using it, and my dad and his sister came into the room. They were very skeptical about the whole thing. So my dad said, "I don't want to touch the board, but I'll tell you the questions to ask, and we'll see if it gets it right." And he asked, "What was the very first car that I ever had?" And right away, it gave the answer. And I don't even remember what that answer was, but it was correct at the time. And my dad said, "Bullshit." So my aunt jumps in, thinking that my cousin or I knew the answer. She said, "Oh yeah, well, ask it who I caught him in the back seat of that car with." And when it actually spelled out the correct answer, she left the room so quick and said, "That's it, I'm done." When I sat down to use it by myself, that's when I felt it pulling out from underneath my fingers. It was starting to move on its own. I put it back in the box, and I haven't touched it since. My grandma on my mother's side, I remember as a kid, she always said that 80 was going to be enough for her. And when she got cancer, she was 79. During this time, my grandpa, her husband, was at the VA hospital with problems of his own, so she came to spend her final days with us at the house. Before she passed, she would talk about people who had passed already coming into the bedroom, and you'd catch her reaching out, and she'd say that she was reaching for this light in the room. And some of that is, the typical stuff that you hear about when someone passes away, about seeing a light, and their loved ones who have already passed. I was working on the Oregon coast in a kite shop, but there was this one day when it was really slow, and all I could think of was, call your mother and tell her you love her. So I picked up the phone, and I called the house. And there was no answer. I immediately started shaking. I knew that something had happened. I just felt it in my gut. I can't explain how I knew. I just knew. Pretty soon I got a call back from my dad.
"Hey, Gary, I'm trying on your house phone, whether it works or not. I got the same message on this as on your other, leave me a message thing."
And he said, "Gary, we almost lost your mother. She had passed away, but they brought her back. But then as time progressed, my mom started confiding in me with some strange things that she was dealing with. One of those was not feeling like she was in her body anymore, like she was disconnected somehow. She would get these visits by sparkly things around her that would circle around her. And there were times I would walk in on her and catch her talking to these things and being very frustrated with them and telling them to go away. There was this one day I came to their house to visit, and I was driving down the driveway when I saw my mom run out of the front door and across the yard. She took me up into the kitchen, where I saw all of this popcorn and popcorn kernels all over the kitchen floor. She was at the house alone, making her mother's recipe for popcorn balls, when from behind her, she heard somebody call her name.
Dixie.
She turned around, and she saw her mother, who had passed away a few years before this, and herself standing behind her. And she was so relieved to hear her doctor tell her, "You're not crazy. I hear this stuff all the time from people who have passed, who've been brought back." We were at my grandmother's, my dad's mother, and my mom sat with me out in their motorhome, and she told me, "Gary, this asthma is going to kill me." Sure enough, 3 months later, she had another asthma attack. I knew again before even being told. But this time she had gone too long without oxygen, and it put her into a coma. So 3 days later, she passed away again. And this time she wouldn't be coming back. Actually, about a year later, I was sitting with my dad in the living room, looking towards the stairs that go up to my bedroom. And he said, "Gary, I saw your mom walking up those stairs." I was like, "What?" He said, "Just recently." And then he said, "Gary, I'm not shitting you." And for my dad to say that, I knew he was telling me the truth. It was a Thanksgiving when my mom had already passed, but my dad was still around, when in the basement, on top of the TV down there, there sat a VHS tape with writing on the spine in my mom's handwriting that said Thanksgiving 1997. She had passed away that following February of 98. When I asked my dad where it came from, he had no clue. And so I put it on and I watched the whole thing. And it was the first time I actually sat and watched video of my mother since she had passed. I felt like I had hung out with her on a holiday again. My dad ended up getting cancer and he passed away in 2014. It was just a couple months after he passed that I was hanging out with a friend in LA when a FaceTime call came through on my phone and it said it was Dad. I showed my friend and we looked at each other for a minute and then I didn't answer. I had edited together a video for his memorial that included this ABBA song, Chiquitita. It was one of his favorite songs. He would sing all the time. So on the 2-year anniversary of his memorial, I was over at their house. I was unloading some things out of his truck. And all of a sudden I heard the beginning of Chiquitita playing. I was freaked out. I was like, where is that coming from? And I realized my phone had turned on by itself. I hadn't even been playing iTunes or anything. It started playing that song on its own. Now, my first instinct was to run into the house, and I stopped myself. I went back, I sat on the back end of his truck, and I said, "Dad, if you're here, I'm just gonna sit here with you for a while." And I listened to the song all the way through. I hadn't listened to it since his memorial 2 years before. Then, a couple days later, I get back to my house, and I'm sitting downstairs and thinking about what had happened, when all of a sudden I felt like something was in the room with me. The only thing I could think of to do was to start recording on my phone. And I don't even know what told me to do that, but I hit record and I sat there quietly for a while. When I played it back, I heard this. Now, I don't know what you hear, but I hear ABBA. Almost as if somebody was saying, "This really happened." I was up in the loft going through some boxes after my dad had passed, and on the same stairwell where he had seen my mother climb the stairs after she had passed, I saw a shadow figure that just reminded me of Dad for some reason. And I grabbed my camera and I captured this. It was around the holidays when I sat down to play a word game on my phone with an unknown opponent. Partway into that game, I noticed that I had the correct letters to spell out the word glads, which were my mother's favorite flowers, gladiolas. As I'm waiting for it to become my turn again, of course, I'm sitting there thinking about my mother because of this word I just spelled, and the very next word that the opponent played was Dixie. That was my mother's name. Oh, I still get chills thinking about it. So right up here, in that window there, is where the kitchen is. My mom loved to cook. She spent a lot of time in the kitchen. Whenever I came to the house, I would always see her in that window. One of my nephews and I, we were in the kitchen cooking, and we were talking about my mom, his grandma. We were standing by the oven when the overhead fan turned on by itself. Now look at this thing. You really have to push down on these metal switches for it to turn on. So when it turned on, my nephew and I kind of went silent, and then we looked at each other and I just reached up and I turned it off. But it really felt like my mom was saying, "I hear you talking about me."
Gary is on the line from Seattle, and he's going to talk about something that's been happening with his late parents' home, and maybe get your thoughts on it. Gary, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on.
I was woken by this sound of a woman singing in the house.
Huh.
And not singing words, really, more of a humming a tune type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounded like she was roaming the house, like checking things out, just casually singing to herself. So I got up and I went looking for what could be causing this, or if someone was in the house. And every time I catch up to it, to the sound, it would change direction, like it would be behind me.
Huh.
And so I'd turn back around and go look for it again, and then the same thing would happen. This happened probably 3 or 4 times until I got to the basement, and then that's where it stopped. But what's funny is the next morning, my nephew came by, and I had asked him if he had experienced anything there recently, and he started to tell me about this singing woman in the middle of the night, and I immediately was covered in goosebumps. Like, oh my gosh, okay, that just happened to me last night.
Around the same time as this singing woman incident, I was over there with Tabitha, and we were sitting in the basement. I was doing some writing, I think, and I thought I saw this person out the window. So I got up and I walked towards the window to take a look, and nobody was out there. That's when I heard something with claws running up beside me. Of course, I thought it was Tabitha, so I looked down to say something to her, and she wasn't there. She was still on the couch behind me. What was beside me, you couldn't see. But the carpet design was moving. So it was like there was something there that you were seeing through, and its movements were making the carpet look like it was moving. This sent chills up my spine like nothing I had ever experienced before. I turned around to run back to the couch to where Tabitha was, and time slowed down. It was like I was running through mud trying to get away from this thing until finally it's like I broke free, and then I was back there with her and I grabbed her and we left the basement. This time over there, my nephew started to tell me about this experience that he had.
Went to the bottom of the stairs. You know the shuffleboard sign?
Mm-hmm.
The scoreboard? It was like, I could see everything else perfectly, but there was just a little section of that shuffleboard sign that looked like it was underwater, like waves. But when I went to go upstairs, it was like, the only way I can describe it is like when you create static electricity and balloons stick to you.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel that on the back of me. But I remember it took me so long to get to the top of the stairs.
The similarities in these two stories have got me thinking. Is the basement the place where these things are coming and going? So at the end of August, beginning of September of 2019, my nephew went to go stay there on his way to the coast, to the Oregon coast. I was going to meet him over there and my brother to go camping. So on his way to the Oregon coast, he and his wife and daughter stopped at the house. They went inside and they heard somebody walking around upstairs. Now, the second level has one bedroom on it. It was the bedroom that I grew up in. My nephew goes up there to check it out, and the door to my bedroom had been closed and was locked. From the other side of the door came up. This freaked him out a bit and thought, oh my God, there's squatters in the house. He runs back downstairs, calls 911. A few minutes later, about 20 to 30 officers show up at the house. So anyway, they get there. They ask my nephew to draw up a floor plan of the house so they can get in there, know their way around, and be able to check every place where these people could be hiding. Then they asked my nephew and his family to wait at the end of the driveway. One of the officers starts speaking through a megaphone.
We know you're in there. We have the house surrounded. Our dog will bite when he finds you.
The officers that went upstairs to my old bedroom, they found the door was locked, as my nephew said. They knocked on the door, and just like what happened to my nephew, from the other side, boom! Immediately, the officers drew their guns. One of them kicked the door open, and there was nobody in there. There was nothing that could have fallen up against the door to make a noise. They searched the rest of the house. They searched outside. On their way out, they told my nephew, we didn't find anybody in there, but we don't deal with ghosts.
We don't deal with ghosts. We don't deal with ghosts.
And they left. Him and his wife are standing in the living room, and they're debating on whether or not they actually wanted to spend the night there because it was so scary. As they were talking about this, from upstairs in my bedroom, the mirror that hung on the wall since my high school days came crashing to the ground. Grabbed their things, left one light on in the living room, locked up the house, and started to leave. Now, as they were driving down the driveway, they looked back towards the house, and the one light they had left on in there turned off. A few weeks later, my nephew sent me this picture, claiming that he woke up with a pentagram scratched onto his chest. So that incident right there was the turning point. That was when I decided I had to document all of these things that had been happening there, and I was determined to capture some more things on video. Now, I wasn't quite sure how to go about this yet, so I tried contacting some of the local state paranormal investigators, and I was just not coming up with anything. Either I wasn't hearing back from them, or I was discovering that they didn't exist anymore. So I went to one of the guys who started the Ghost Hunters TV show, Grant Wilson, and I had a couple of conversations with him that went really well, and he was genuinely intrigued about what was going on there, but then our conversations just kind of fizzled, and then I never heard back from him. So I moved forward with doing this on my own. Now, although this was frustrating at the time because I thought I was actually going to get some help with this, it turned out to be for the best, because if it had gone that direction, I wouldn't have moved forward with this series, and I've had a lot of fun doing so. It's been very therapeutic for me. So in case you were hoping for the ghost hunters to show up at my childhood home, don't count on it. Is someone here? Knock once for yes, twice for no. No one's here. Let's go. Have I ever mentioned that my hometown's elevation sits at 666 feet above sea level? coincidence? On my way to the house, I stopped like I usually do to pick up a few things that I'm going to need while there, and something told me I needed to buy a add-on pack for the Cards Against Humanity game that we keep at the house. I had it in my hand, and then I put it back, and then I was about to check out, and I thought, no, I need that card pack, so I went back and I got it again. When I got to the house, the first thing I did was open it up, and something was telling me to pull a card from the middle of the deck. So I did. This was that card. Wait, what? Out of 300 cards. This literally made me jump when I read it. So was this a coincidence, or is it more of a, hello, Gary, we know you're here type of message? And here we are, in my old bedroom. This night, the first night there, I sat in bed and I was thinking, what would be the scariest thing that could happen right now? The first thing that came to my head was a knock from the inside of that closet. So as I thought this, I quickly started to record audio, and not 5 seconds into it, this happened. The second camera I sometimes use is also giving me a welcome message. It will not stay on. It just keeps powering off and powering on, powering off, powering on, saying welcome, welcome. All right, so tonight I'm going to start at 3 a.m. So I just... God damn it! Scared by my own shadow. I'm going to take a nap until 3. Okay, we are ready to get this investigation started. As far as equipment goes, we have an EMF detector, a digital voice recorder, a analog cassette recorder, a UV light, a spirit box and speaker, a laser pen, and a mag light, flashlight. And let's start with the flashlight. And we'll just begin by asking if you would please turn the flashlight on for us if you would like to communicate tonight. Please turn the flashlight on. Is there anybody here with me? Oh my gosh. John is? Is there anybody here with me? Is there anybody I know here? Wait, what? Is there anybody I know here? And that right there is when we stop. Not only did we talk to Satan, but we have his hellhounds outside. And it sounds like there's a ton of them. Actually, they're coyotes, but... Whoa. I thought that was just my camera, like, freaking out and trying to adjust on the lighting. But that's the actual kitchen window. Look, look. See, I hear someone walking around the stairs again. I am so glad I'm doing this. I mean, this stuff is all happening and I just saw a freaking shadow figure over there and it scared me so much I just bit my tongue. No, what is that? Oh, it's my face. It's giving it is my face giving a reflection, and there's the one that it's recording. This was behind me and turned on. If there really is someone down here with me, could you please turn that flashlight back on? Oh my God. Remind me again why I'm doing this by myself.
Grandma? Beatrice, are you here? Beatrice, are you here? Is there anybody here with me this evening?
If you were alive at some point, what gender would you use to describe yourself as? Oh my god, you just said girl, am I right?
I wish I had one of those SLS cameras that picks up a stick figure type of thing where there's an entity.
Wow, this thing actually works. Can you wave? Whoa! Can you touch me?
While I'm getting ready to go to bed, I'm going to keep the digital voice recorder going.
No. Oh, okay.
I don't want this X145528.
Who knows? Oh, he's right across the street. You know how to skate Tupperware? It's a mixture my grandfather would make. She's slippery. She just got off of me fine and went over to you. Funny. Now look behind you, grab.
So I was awakened by something that slapped my leg. And luckily, I started talking in my sleep down here. So I turned on my digital voice recorder to record it, and I caught the slap. Listen.
Ow! That was weird.
I think I'm going to keep this on next to me the rest of the night. Oh, let me hit the light. The reason I'm here talking to you is to find out, did you slap me and wake me up? It was you. Is that correct? Okay. Gotcha. Whoa.
Is this your ball you used to play with? Can you send it back to me? Son of a... When I make these videos and I share these stories, I'm not 100% behind the fact that these could be ghosts or spirits. And the whole thing about contacting spirits and whatnot, I really think is a way of finding reassurance that there is something out there, that all these people that I have lost are not just gone. And I just feel like there's so much going on around us that we can't see, that our limited senses that we have can't pick up on. And I wonder if those other things are able to pick up on us. And that sixth sense that you hear about, I truly believe that it exists because I've felt it and it's right here. So trust your gut. And if you feel like a loved one is around, they probably are. That's all I have for you tonight. Please join me on Halloween as we take one more look at my haunted childhood home before we say goodbye. Until then. I'd like to communicate with the YouTuber who died in this house while investigating ghosts. Can you give me a sign if you're here? Aw, I like you too. Can you move something for us? Can you play some music on that piano over there?